Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by TheLines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And it's Tuesday. We've got 6 games to choose from tonight. In this one, we're going to be taking a look at the Hawks. They're hosting the Cleveland Cavaliers. Also have another game video up for you and our player props. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us. Also want you to head to thelines.com. That's where we have all of our great written content for you guys. We're throwing the picks up there each and every day now as well. And we also have that odds finder tool up there. You can make sure you're getting the best odds available to you from all these books that are giving us bets in the NBA this season. Nate, let's run through this little 6-game slate real quick and then talk about our game, the Hawks and Cavs.
Yeah, Celtics are minus 11 at Washington. Wizards appear to be letting go of their play-in hopes here. Kuzma and Beal are out. Miami and Toronto are in the thick of that race, though. The Heat right now plus 3.5 at Toronto. We got Cleveland in a pick'em at Atlanta here, -1 for the Cavs on the road. And that total's been bet up a little bit to 235. Orlando's +7 at Memphis. Jazz expected to sit tonight, but Grizz look like they're back on track. The Hornets are +10 at OKC. And then the last game we break down is Pelicans +9 at Golden State. Total of 234 out there in the Bay. Yeah, I mean, the Cavs here, we talked about them kind of settling into their position as the 4 seed, but they actually have a chance at the 3 here after Philly sat Joel Embiid, threw everything for a loop on Monday, everyone's expectation, and now put us in a dead even race for MVP, according to odds makers, by the way. Just quick aside there, but Cleveland had a little bit more motivation, I think, to keep gunning here. It is, a pretty chill schedule for them. Only 5 more games after this. They have 2 days off before they play the Knicks in a potential first-round preview, so there might be some gamesmanship there. And then they play 4 non-competitive teams. So it's interesting, a little bit of a thing to look at. How motivated are they going to be? But, I mean, I think that speaks well to them continuing to play subpar defense and not being the defense that we understand to be number 2 in rating on the year and absolutely lights out at home. They haven't even been lights out at home necessarily over their last 15 or so. They're actually gone over in 13 of their last 18, 6 of their last 8. Basically, since the All-Star break, been a league average defense on the road, especially, but 7th in offensive rating on the road. They have these weird splits where they're giving up a very high percentage from 3, but limiting attempts. But that's fine with Atlanta. Atlanta takes like the fewest threes of any competitive team in the league. Atlanta is just, trading buckets. Not much has changed since Quinn Snyder came aboard, except that they're scoring a little bit more consistently and giving up points a little bit more consistently. They're only 8-7 to the over, but that's because they have these astronomical totals. Their 4 unders at home under Quinn Snyder here are totals of 240, 246, 236, and 242. So all of those getting slightly over where this total's at right now. Of course, they did host the Cavs in, I think it was Snyder's first game as coach, and lit them up for 136. Going back to when Nate McMillan's the coach, the last 2 times they hosted the Cavs last year, they're now averaging 130, hitting 15.5 threes at 46%, getting 26 free throw attempts. So putting up, combined totals of 244 in those games, even at a pace of just 97. And the pace is up under Snyder, certainly at home. They have a 101 pace since the break, or since he came aboard here. They're scoring 126 at home, allowing 123. They're, 4th in pace in general, denying second chance, but they are dead last in opponents' paint points. So another check, and also dead last in fast break points. Not that Cleveland likes to get out and break, but, it just spells well for Garland and Donnie Mitchell to both have good games scoring the basketball. And even with Donnie struggling, against his old skipper, if you want, Snyder, he did not have a good shooting night in that first game. Only 19 points on 2-10 from 3. But Darius Garland picked him up with 33 points in 31 minutes. And he's now, absolutely roasting Trae Young in 3 of the last 4 meetings, basically dropping a 30-piece without breaking a sweat on who some call the worst defender in the NBA. Played a little bit better recently, but if with him at the forefront of the attack, it's a problem defensively for Atlanta, but not offensively. I mean, he's an absolute wizard on offense. And in this matchup, I mentioned the last 3 home against Cavs, he's been leading the way with a 143 offensive rating, shooting 52% from deep, hitting 4 threes, 32 points per game. DeJounte Murray has also roasted the Cavs his last 2 home games here, including his first one under Quinn. So I just like points here. I think the Cavs are continuing to get undervalued in terms of their ability to play a higher scoring game.
They are. I understand that. My only hesitancy, and I think we definitely are leaning Cavs. I mean, I lean Cavs a bit. I know Atlanta at home, it equals points more than anything, right? Like you kind of mentioned, what they've done in the 15 games since Snyder's been there, and it's a lot of offense. It's just go get a lot of points. And the thing is like a lot of those points, I mean, they're not hitting threes. And I know we talk about the Cavs being a little bit worse at 3, but Atlanta's scoring their points in the paint. They're scoring their points by attacking a lot more right now, and that's why I like the Cavs a little bit. And I do want Jared Allen to play. Give you a little precursor to that player props video that we have as well, and talking about Clint Capella possibly going under for these Hawks. He's struggled against this front court when he's had to play against at least one of Allen and or Mobley, and hasn't really reached his prop at all in what it is tonight. And it's more of an indication of how the Cavs are going to beat them and how they're going to take away what the Hawks want to do more than anything. In the last roughly 11 games, I just look back to the past 11 because that's where the Cavs have been the best team in the league, and I kind of wanted to just see what have the Hawks done in that time frame as well. And they're scoring their points down low off of those scrappy second chance points. It's like attacking the offensive boards, it's attacking the glass. And it's playing with a lot of pace, and that's what the Hawks are about right now, without too much defense, obviously, something that's been a problem for a while now. But those second chance points and those points in the paint for the Hawks, that's where they're leading since Quinn Snyder took over. That's where they're number 1 in the league right now in terms of getting their points. So with that in mind, you look at who's got the number 1 in terms of limiting opponents' points in the paint on the season. It's the Cavs. Over their last 11 games, the Cavs are still top 5. They are getting back on defense, still 7th in terms of limiting fast break points, and then those second chance points as well, coming off the fact that they're getting offense or defensive rebounds on the season, also limiting those to the tune of like 3rd best. It's a little bit different, right? There's some splits for the Cavs on the road versus at home, but even in the last, like I said, 11 games where they're tied for the best record in the league, they are 5-1 on the road in that time, and the average score of those games is about 114, 109, right? Gets you to about 223. I understand that is not the team that they're playing right now. The teams that they've been playing on the road are the Nets, the all of a sudden good at defense Hornets at home, by the way, and then the Miami Heat twice. So it's not a good indication of what's going to happen tonight. And I don't think you can really look at too much of the recency numbers for Cleveland in terms of the way that there's the amount of points that are being scored, the pace that they're playing at. This one's going to be different. Like they're going to have to get it and go. And I'm confident as well that Donnie Mitchell and DG, the PG there, Mr. Garland, are going to be ready to go against Trae Young. And you mentioned the motivation. Both these teams have motivation. And I think that just leads to more and more points because the Hawks could potentially, they're not going to jump the Heat, and they're not going to jump even the Nets at this point, although we'd love the Heat to do that for us so we can get the Nets in that play-in game, but for our futures bets. But more importantly for this one, Jared Allen's questionable. And if Jared Allen's questionable or doesn't play, it's just going to be more points, man. And it's tough to gauge whether or not he's going to play because, like I said, shoot, if you had told me I have to bet on whether or not Embiid's going to play last night, I would have said, yeah, there's nothing that can keep him out. But that's just not the case down the stretch for these guys right now. I think a lot of teams know that they're gearing up for the playoffs. I think the Cavs are happy to like you said, have that gamesmanship in the next game where they're playing the Knicks at home. Who knows who plays in that one? And to be honest, that would lead me to believe that Jared Allen would play in this one because why would you really play him against a Knicks team that you've already locked up that 4 seed, barring like a complete meltdown where you lose everything and the Knicks just win out. You're pretty much going to get that 4 seed. You don't really need to show the Knicks any part of your hand, so keep Allen off the floor. In which case, if you did have any desire to get that 3 seed, go ahead and try to win this game against the Hawks and get Jared Allen in there. So keep an eye on that because that's going to impact the total, in my opinion, big big time, because if Clint Capella can't really help them get offensive rebounds, if John Collins and Okongwu are not necessarily getting offensive rebounds, then they're not going to be able to score nearly as well. But I do like the Cavs in this one first and foremost. And if Jay Allen doesn't play, I feel you on an over.
No, I like the Hawks, actually. I think it's over first and then Hawks as a correlation play because they win these high-scoring games, and they're stunningly, consistently inconsistent. Like, they just alternate win-loss, coming off a loss in Memphis. They actually haven't won more than 2 straight since January 20th, haven't lost more than 2 straight since January 2nd. So they could lose 2 in a row, sure. But I mean, it is a situation where they have to win. They could easily, with any loss, go from 8th to 10th in this play-in situation, right? And that's not where you want to be at all. That's a huge difference versus the Cavs saying, you know, they have a 5-game lead on the Knicks and they have a very slim chance of catching Philly. And yeah, I mean, the injuries, thank you for mentioning Jared Allen. Also, Isaac Okoro questionable, which would really help an over if LeVert's playing more. Much better offensive player, much worse defensive player. And thank you for mentioning the schedule, too. Like, the Cavs in their last 8, they're allowing 107. Every single team they've played is bottom 10 in offensive rating, except the Sixers, who they gave up 118 to. Yeah. Atlanta's second in offensive rating since the All-Star break. So, I mean, they've shown what they can do in this matchup. 3 straight, like, that's not a fluke. Scoring 130 against a team since they became the Cavs, like the defensive team. But it's just not the same defense on the road. Atlanta and Trae Young know how to attack it. So I like them to score a lot and get the win that way.
Yeah, they're gonna have to get their points down low and earn them, but it's definitely possible. You have a lot stronger conviction in this one on the Hawks, and I'm not necessarily saying I'm ready to put any money on this Cavs team. I do like them down the stretch as well in terms of games, in specifically inside of games where they're coming down and being pretty clutch are the Cavs. But like you said, if this is going to go higher scoring to that extent, then yeah, the Hawks would be, you know, at the very least, the Hawks would have a much better chance. It's not much of a line right now. I can't see the Hawks winning a defensive battle. So depending on the game theory that you believe in, you know, I think the way that the Hawks are scoring is stoppable. But if they're just going to play at that ridiculous pace and attack at the way that they are, then yeah, my conviction in an under would not be there at all. So,
and then we got Pels +9 on a back-to-back. Technically, total is 234. I say technically because they played a completely tanking Blazers team that not only is starting a bunch of rookies and unknowns, but they will yank those starters immediately to ensure they lose by 30 points right now. So it's not exactly short rest, but you got to look at the back-to-back numbers. For the Pels, I mean, 4-6 straight up and against the spread, 7-3 the over, allowing more points. But the key factor for me is they actually have a better opponent's 3-point percentage. This is the number 1 3-point defense in the league. And so you play the Dubs. It's not really a coincidence that they've been able to keep these games low scoring when they've played the Dubs. Granted, Steph Curry has not played in the last 4 meetings. But, you know, it's still very impressive what they've been able to do against a Warriors team that lights it up from deep often. 4 of the last 5 have gone under. 10 of the last 12 have gone under between these teams. So that includes plenty with Steph. You just let's zoom out and look at Steph's numbers when he did play. He is getting 31 points per game, but less efficient than the insane efficiency we've seen from him. 46% from the field, 41% from deep against the Pelicans. And Jordan Poole, ridiculously inefficient, 37% from floor, 27% from 3, a 102 offensive rating. His last 4. The Dubs are coming off of this game where, they snap a 9-game home win streak and only scored 96 against the Wolves. And it's kind of bad news that Poole was the savior off the bench in that game, right? At least for the offense, keeping him in it. And now he's going to be feeling himself, and who knows how that's going to go against a team that he really struggled against. But most importantly, look at the last 5 for the Warriors, only getting 104 a game against these Pels with a 106 offensive rating. Only hitting 11.5 threes at 34%, 19 free throw attempts, the pace down to 97.5. And that is where the pace is at. You know, since the All-Star break, they slow it down at home. Their defense is 20 points better per 100 possessions, which is just insane. But they're getting all their points off threes. I mean, highest percentage, of course, because it's a Steph Curry team, 17 threes at 39%. So if you're going to hit closer to 11 than 17, we got to have a lower scoring game here. In fact, the last time these teams faced in Golden State, it was 108-99, which is way under 234. Obviously, no Steph Curry, though. Also, no Jonas Valanciunas, which allowed the Warriors to kind of dominate the glass. That's not been the case for the Pels lately. He's playing really well. Ingram struggled, though, even without Andrew Wiggins, so I'm not seeing a lot of offensive firepower for these Pelicans. I think where they're going to have to try to stay in it is with defense, which has been their MO all year. I mean, like 5th in defensive rating, under in 11 of their last 14 conference games, and they've climbed back into this one. Now they're a half game behind both Mini and Golden State to actually get out of the play-in after it looked like their season was over. You said they're surging. 4 of the 5 teams they've beaten are tanking, but when you lose to the Rockets before that streak, you got to bring it and actually win the games that you're supposed to win, and they've done that, and they've done it with defense. So I'm not going to try to pick a 9-point spread here. I think we definitely expect the Warriors to win. I would just look at the under, and if you want to take Warriors -5 with a higher under, I think it's not a bad spot for a tease here on a short slate.
Yeah, I mean, these dubs, man. Jesus, that loss to the Timberwolves. It's actually, to be honest, let me be honest. The Timberwolves play the Dubs well, and I think there's correlation here because the Pelicans play the Dubs well.
Thank you.
Precisely, right. Correlation. I'm correlating those two for sure, and I'm saying because of the style of play, and because where they look to get their points and how they stop points, and this Pelicans defense is long and rangy and athletic, and it has been coming along all season. We haven't talked about Herb Jones nearly as much as last year. We just love to say Herb Jones, but we haven't had the chance to talk about the Pellies as much. I mean, dude, before they went on this 5-game win streak. And also, just to be clear, I just said they were surging. I didn't say they were beating good teams. So they are beating scrubs, and I did say it a little bit tongue in cheek because of who they've been playing, the Pels. But they've just been beating who's in front of them. And before that, it's not like they were beating bad teams before that. Before they went on this streak, they actually weren't beating teams under 500 nearly as much as they should have been, with a winning percentage of like 35% when they were coming in the previous games where they were the favorite in those situations. So they weren't beating bad teams. Then they did. The point is like, why? What have they been doing? And it's really just focusing on the things that they do well. Shut down the 3-ball, get out into transition when they can, and then do a good job just defending pretty much all over the floor, man. Like you said, that's been their MO all season. Before this 5-game win streak, they had the 4th worst record in the NBA after Zion went down in early January. And once Zion went down, they were cooked for a while. BI was out as well. Now they've had the consistency. I think that's a big part of it, and they've been able to get right. And I would not feel comfortable picking the Dubs to win by 9 points or double digits in this one. And that also just makes me realize, the points, they're not going to be there, because if you look even at the previous games that these teams have played, if you just go back to even just this season, just start there, like it's blowout city usually. Like the closest game was 9 points. There was some giving up going on when the home team was just blowing out the away team essentially, is what's been happening for them this season. And in that sense, like I could see the Dubs doing that after a loss, but even if they get up to like 120, I just don't feel as good. I would still say it's blowout city makes it possible that this still, remains under 230 at that point, because it could be like a 120-108 game or something like that, and that would not shock me either. But the Dubs would have to get those threes up, right? They're scoring the third highest percentage of their points off of 3. We know what they do, but just narrow things down a little bit, for the Dubs in terms of those home road splits over the last like 15 games or so. I know Steph missed a few of those, but they've played 7 of those games at home in the last 15. Obviously 6-1 there versus 2-6 on the road in that time frame. But the 6-1 comes with 116 points a game and playing defense to the tune of limiting their opponent to 105 points a game, winning by about 11 points. But it's really about them limiting opponents' 3-pointers. Their 3-point percentage is still fine. It's at 38% at home, making 16 threes, but 16 threes for them is still like, if you look at the 20 free throw attempts that they're getting, right? They're not going to the line. They're not stopping the clock and getting points that way. They're not crashing the glass and getting offensive boards. They still dime up and they're getting close to 30 assists a game. But also what did the Pelicans do really well? Limit assists and limit your ability to move the ball around the wing and get open shots, etc. So Yes, Steph is going to make a difference from the 108-99 total that they played at last time, probably, but he's not necessarily going to change the speed and tempo of this game. That's going to be a bit choppier, even if the Pels do try to get out on the fast break a bit. They've been getting fast break points over the course of the last 10 games or so, even before this streak that they were doing well on. But at home, the Dubs get back on defense, unlike on the road where they don't, and they give up even more points off of turnovers on the road as well. So, I mean, that's the thing. If Golden State could just please, as we're both definitely going to be hitting this under, if Golden State could please just not turn the ball over as dumb as possible. The style of turnovers that they had against the Timberwolves was painful to watch. It was like there's already a hand in that passing lane. Why are you throwing it there? But that's the case for them on the road more so. So I think at home, if they can at least just take that 14 turnovers, 13 turnovers. Still not great, but would be so awesome to keep this thing under. And I think that they can do that as they've been doing that at home more so lately, limiting those turnovers. They've got 2 more on the road. So I think this is a really ripe opportunity. And this thing is way too high. I was very surprised to see 234.5. I think this thing goes under about 230.
Yeah, at least if they commit turnovers, just don't make them live ball turnovers. Because, I mean, the Pels are pretty good at forcing those, but they're not great scoring in transition or taking advantage of them. And I don't really trust this offense at the half court that is for New Orleans very much, with CJ dealing with a thumb, with Ingram not showing much against the Warriors last time out. And I don't know if you can just pound the interior with Looney and Draymond out there. I don't know how Joe Val is going to do. So I think there's definitely, like you said, this could be a runaway for the Warriors. I definitely expect them to win. But those games have still gone under. They've blown out the Pelicans plenty of times in this 12-game span, and it just shut down that offense because without Zion, it's just not a very explosive team at all. This is what we've seen 4 months, and I'm not going to be fooled by a 5-game sample size against a Clippers team that was just trying to find a lineup that worked, and they did last night. Congrats, Nick Batum, back to relevancy. But I think that's a total anomaly that they hit 21 threes against the Clips to get over 240 total there. I don't see this Pelicans team doing that consistently against any team that's trying, let alone a team that's an elite defensive team when they're at home.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, either way, for the Dubs in this one, it's kind of a must win. I mean, you got to stay out. You got to stay in that play-in, and I mean they're in there, but this is a big game for both of them. And I mean, losing against the Timberwolves, that's how the Dubs have been playing this season. They're not going to lose 2 in a row at home, but I would prefer to have to hit that money line for sure, which is not much there for the Dubs in terms of the juice you get back on it. So if you want to parlay that, I totally get it. It's still a pretty small slate. Either way, the under on this one is probably my favorite bet of the night in general. So you've got to. It's just you play on the Dubs, the sort of mentality that people have about Golden State, especially at home with that offense. But just dive into the numbers a little bit more deeply. Look at who they're playing, and 234 is way too much. So maybe a little alternate at 230.5. Get a few more, a little bit more bang on my buck there. But Nate, let's go ahead and just jump right into your first NBA play a prop for tonight.
Yeah, so Jaylen Brown came out last week with some, somewhat vague comments about not necessarily being part of the Celtics plans or whatever. He says he was taken a little bit out of context. Obviously, everything was blown out of proportion because that's the NBA news cycle. But, I mean, definitely you've seen some results in the last 2 games that the team's all right, the simplest way to handle this is to just make sure Jaylen gets on the All-NBA team. Then we can give him a supermax, and then he's just part of this team for 5 years or whatever it will be. So they just let him go off for 41 points in a 44-point win on Sunday. So, to me, that shows you that I'm not that worried about the 11-point spread in Washington. The fact that Washington has already ruled out Beal and Kuzma, might also rule out Daniel Gafford, which definitely would hurt their defense. But I mean, it's an easy matchup. Washington's lost 8 of 10 with a 122 defensive rating, actually giving up the second most points and most threes to small forwards in their last 7 here. Jaylen averages 31 points on a 35% usage rate with elite splits. His last 3 against the Wiz, that's a 136 offensive rating. In those 3, in his last 7, he's getting 32 a game, 122 offensive rating. He's a plus 66. He's been the most consistent player, even before these comments, on a team that is kind of sputtering and kind of losing focus. And in particular, Jason Tatum just hasn't been very efficient at all since the All-Star break, and Jalen has been. And it's kind of both him making his case to the franchise and making his case for All NBA, which is something I think the front office would very much like him to do. So again, I think he should get plenty of usage, score over 26.5, which is his prop. It's at even money basically, and plus 140 for 4 assists is juicy. I'd have no problem lumping any of these together for 35.5 PRA. I mean, he's been pretty consistently over 10 rebounds and assists in the span as well. And just being the best player on the floor, frankly. Like, I'm not trying to take more shots at Tatum or anything. I'm just saying Brown has more on the line right now, and that the franchise wants to see him succeed.
We are watching and we are witnessing the division of Boston sports fans here. Nate on one side of the argument. Nate's a Jalen guy. Are you a JB guy or a JT guy? But no, I think it's silly. I agree with you, man. I'm joking. I'm not putting words in your mouth. Boston fans, don't listen to me. But no, more importantly, like, this is so silly. This was Jason Tatum hanging out with his good friend Kevin Durant at one point during a time where trade talks were going on about KD, and because Jason Tatum walked into like a Starbucks with KD, everyone's like, oh my God, he's going to Boston. And then the media comes rushing to Jaylen Brown like, Jalen, what do you think of the fact that Jason Tatum and Kevin Durant had frozen yogurt together yesterday? And it's like, nobody cares, dude. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are also friends. This is fine. I think JT's watching him going, yeah, Jalen, just go get yours right now, man. I don't care. There's 7 games left. Like, I don't have just nearly as big of an ego about it as is made out to be. So go ahead and get yours. And I totally agree with you on the sort of game theory of Jaylen Brown being the guy right now for this team, that they want to get him some points. And who knows if they're going to be able to catch the Bucks with 2 games left. The Bucks don't really lose anymore, have an incredibly easy schedule. And I don't know that that's necessarily their number one priority as much as they want to be playing well and have their second best player in a really good place once they get into the playoffs. So I'm going with a very confident bet that I have here, Nate, and it's Clint Capella under against this Cleveland Cavaliers team that we covered in that game video. 23.5 points and rebounds for the big man. Minus 120 on PointsBet is the best place I could find it using that odds finder tool. I do want Jared Allen to play for this bet to be I can feel as confident as I do if Jared Allen will play, because when honestly Jared Allen or Evan Mobley, as long as one of them is playing, they've shut down Clint Capella to get under this prop in pretty much most of the times that they played him since Evan Mobley got to the team last season. They allow the fewest points per game and rebounds per game to centers, does Cleveland. They allow the fewest rebounds to their opponent on the road. I mean, top 3 everywhere, but best on the road. 3rd in limiting points in the paint. 3rd in limiting second chance points. Where do you think Clint Capella scores from, right? 90% of his points come from the paint. 33% of those points are coming from second chance points off of offensive rebounds that the Cavs limit really, really well. His last 5 versus Cleveland, he's averaging 7.5 points, 9 boards in that time. His rebound prop is at 12.5 tonight, which is just bad odds to go under because it's so high. They're giving you plus odds to take the over on it, and I'm not that crazy because there's not going to be that many rebounds. I know we'd like a faster pace in Atlanta with this Quinn Snyder team since he took over, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Clint Capella is going to be the one getting those rebounds or putbacks on a fast break necessarily. So he's only hit this prop once in the last 5 times he's played Cleveland, and in that game, neither Jared Allen nor Evan Mobley played at all in it. So he's averaging just 23 minutes per game against the Cavs in those time, and really in the last 10, 26 minutes per game, because since then we've seen Okongwu and John Collins come back from injury, and their front court is a lot more formidable, so they don't need him to play close to 30 minutes. He's not getting more than the 26, like I said. And I think this high total is there for him tonight because he's had success. Yeah, you look at who he's played in the last 5 games: Memphis, Indiana, Detroit, San Antonio, and Minnesota. The only team that is not in the bottom 5 there over their last 15 games in terms of limiting points to centers is Minnesota. Everybody else is just hemorrhaging all those points and rebounds to the opposing center. Most of those teams also just not trying to win in terms of Indy, Detroit, and San Antonio. So I think there's plenty of reason that Clint Capella will be stopped even if Jared Allen does not play tonight. Evan Mobley's played, and that's been enough to keep CeCe off the glass like that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it doesn't even really matter who he's playing against, or I mean, as much who's out there for the opposition. It just is the lack of minutes that you highlighted. Mm-hmm. He can get yanked for so many different reasons. Like he's a very one-dimensional player offensively, and the Hawks have a lot of different things going on now with Snyder, a lot of different actions, and sometimes they just want to roll with Okongwu or Collins as small ball 5. If Allen sits, maybe it's Collins and Mobley both playing center. So yeah, I have no problem taking the under on Capella. because I like points in this game, and that means I don't really like rebounds. But I do like Darius Garland for the Cavs. Matching up on Trae Young, talked about it a little bit in the game video. He dropped 33 points in 31 minutes when these teams played a month ago in Atlanta. That came during a string of really strong road games where he averaged 35 points and assists in that span. And on the road, since the start of February, he's averaging 3 more points per game, averaging 22.5, slightly higher usage rate, shooting nearly 50% from 3 versus 37%. The assists have dropped on the road, and he only had 2 assists to go along with those 33 points against Atlanta. Atlanta's actually really good at limiting team assists. So I'm going to shy away from that and just say let's take 21.5 points for DG, which is really good odds at FanDuel, minus 104, because since those 5 strong roadies, he's gone cold in 3 against, as you mentioned, the Charlotte Hornets that are suddenly a defensive juggernaut with Dennis Smith Jr. at the forefront there. And then the Nets twice, a team that just doesn't score and didn't really, inspire the Cavs to score much. But this matchup is total, guard centric, right? You got DeJounte guarding Donovan Mitchell, limiting him the last time they played a month ago, or whatever Quinn Snyder knows about Mitchell, helping to limit them. And DG picked up the slack. And if he's matching up on Trae Young, it's food. Trae has roasted him on the other end, by the way, so I have no problem taking Trae props. But DG averaging nearly 30 a game on 61-50 splits with a 35% usage rate now, his last 2 against Trae Young. So I think 21.5 points is pretty low. It's a good buy low opportunity.
Yeah, Darius Garland just looks over at the matchup against Trae Young, goes, "Oh my God, someone my size! Hell yeah, I'm about to roast this dude." But I think you're right. There's going to be points coming from the guard position majorly tonight, and a little bit of like your turn, my turn in terms of the opposition, right? Going up against like Donnie Mitchell's prop is at 28.5 points tonight. That's wildly high, even for a guy who's dropping a bunch of points right now in a game that should be pretty high scoring, because Quinn Snyder's just come in and made that offense, especially at home, just play at like a very, very fast pace with those guards. So we'll see what happens tonight. But I like the point total for DG tonight. DG the PG. So let's finish things off here with Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr. We went to the well with him recently, and that crushed when he had 34 points in a game, even with Ja back. And now Ja is doubtful tonight, and he's had a really nice string of games without Ja Morant, especially in the scoring department. So that's why at 21.5 points, you can get that at minus 108 on FanDuel. Really like that. You made mention here in our notes about him being plus money to win Defensive Player of the Year, which he was for a while. Or he was actually the favorite for a while. Obviously, a nice big comeback by, I believe, Brooke Lopez coming in as well and challenging him for that. So it's going to come down to the stretch, but at plus money, it was worth a mention real quick if you still think Triple J is likely to be able to take that home. I mean, he's averaging 3 blocks a game this season, so more blocks at home. We know some of the stat stuff. Not going to get too far into that. Let's talk about why he's going to get 22 points against this Magic team tonight. 31, 10, and 3 blocks in 32 minutes about a couple months ago in Orlando, and Ja, was in that one as well. Steven Adams even played in that one as well. So I'm about to tell you about all the great numbers that Jaren Jackson Jr. has had this season without Ja and without Steven Adams. Yet the last time he played this Magic team, he still had he still had those 31 points, despite that Ja had 32 points. Ja had like a 34% usage rate, right, as he's normally doing against Orlando. So without Ja in there, I think Tyus Jones, by the way, is not a bad play either. Although what's interesting is Orlando, despite the fact that every single person on their team is 6'10" or taller, has not been playing well against the front court nearly as much as they've been playing well against guards as of late. And obviously Markelle Fultz is a really, really good, big, strong defensive guard, so at point for this team. So it's not like Tyus is necessarily going to be able to do whatever he wants. But either way, against power forwards is actually where they've been struggling. Like I said, bottom 10 in allowing points per game and rebounds per game to power forwards in their last 15, even like fifth most points there in that sense, since like I said, the last roughly couple weeks or 3 weeks, and his last 9 without Ja this season, right? We talk about Triple J and what he's been able to do: 23 points a game, a 28% usage, and in his last 3 versus Orlando, like he likes playing this team, 22 a game with that same roughly 28% usage, in just about 28.5 minutes. And I think you could probably expect him to get a few more minutes with Ja out. In Ja's missed a bunch of games in March, and you just see the amount of time that Triple J has been getting in March so far, which is actually about to end. And he's still getting about 21.5 points and on a 27% usage with 31 minutes a game. And he's been avoiding foul trouble. Like there's some crazy stats when he gets 3+ fouls in the first half, or has like 5 by the start of the fourth quarter. Obviously, his numbers just drop because his minutes drop. He's averaging like 24 minutes a game in those foul trouble games, and then up to about 29, 30 minutes in the games where he's able to maintain 2 or less fouls in the first half, etc. So there's some pretty interesting numbers there about how much he can, how well he can play. And Orlando's not really attacking the basket. Like as big as they are, Wendell Carter Jr. is a 3-point shooter. Paolo's a distance shooter from mid-range, and Franz Wagner as well. So I think there's some pretty good reason to think that, he's going to be able to get his and get down low. And there should be a decent amount of points in this game for a Memphis team that's been scoring the most points per game over their last 11.
Yeah, that's the big concern, is that Memphis at home could run away with it. But Orlando's defense is really bad on the road. So as long as it's relatively close, or even if it is a blowout, I mean, yeah, you mentioned the game where Ja came back against Houston and Triple J had like 35 points and it wasn't close, but Memphis dropped like 150 and they were just, having fun like they do, that front running team that loves to get ahead at home and then just like light you up. And so I think, maybe even in a blowout, even in 3 quarters, he can get there. Yep. It's a matchup against a big team, and he's a really quick, skilled big, which actually seems to help him. And, I'm hoping for a Paolo under, now that we have a little bit of scratch on Jalen Williams for Rookie of the Year. We're hoping maybe he gets made to look bad. But either way, I think Triple J will have his antenna up for that matchup, which he did last time and pretty much dominated against Paolo and company.
Yep. And to be clear, it's a very small smattering of like fractional units that we put on Jalen Williams at like plus 2,500 to win that Rookie of the Year, because Paolo at minus 5,000 probably just has the majority of the season for people to look back at and go, that was crazy. But like, yeah, Jalen will love that kid too. Some pretty fun futures as we're coming down the stretch here, man. You mentioned briefly the MVP is back into about a deadlock, even race after Joel sat last night. You got this Triple J Defensive Player of the Year still available. I think most improved is probably out there to the finisher at Lauri Markkanen. So probably not worth it there, but some fun stuff left. So make sure you're definitely staying on top of all that stuff. And that is all the time we have for you. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page as well. Check out the other couple videos we have up for you tonight. Until we see you next. Happy betting.